Utah, UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Matt, your thoughts about that one? Of course, Utah's coming off an extremely impressive win that it was one of those that I kind of knocked myself upside the head once it was over to say, yeah, it makes sense that Oregon State was going to have that kind of letdown. You travel to one of the tougher places to play in the country. And yeah, Utah, close game for a while. Chance Nolan had to leave the game or was pulled from the game after throwing only 2 completes and 2 picks. And USC gets 3 picks from Clark Phillips and runs away from Oregon State. And of course, again, UCLA finally introduced to Power 5 football this week, and they showed up and played a really nice game against Washington.
Yeah, so 2 main talking points for Utah UCLA. First off, that UCLA was kind of lying in wait for Washington. The Huskies had not played a road game in any of their first 4 games, and of course, Washington's win over Michigan State just looks that much worse now. And also, Washington crushed Stanford in week 4, and Stanford is horrible. I mean, Stanford's a lot worse than I thought. I thought Stanford might start the season slowly, but would evolve and improve. Nope. I mean, Stanford is atrocious. So, Washington's best win is Kent State, right? I think so. And that was in week 1. So, the Huskies not really having a big test and not having any game away from Seattle. And they go down to Southern California, and Washington playing in warm weather environments that often goes sideways for the Huskies. And we saw that. And it's going to be interesting to see how much Washington evolves and improves over the course of the season. Washington is really a mystery team at this point because we don't know which way the season is going to break for UW. So it's going to be interesting to see how Washington evolves. And for that reason, UCLA still has, an element of uncertainty attached to its season and how good it really is. So Utah, the defending Pac-12 champions, that's the big proving ground moment for UCLA. The other big talking point, what happened to Utah in week 1? A running quarterback, an agile, dynamic, athletic, dual threat guy, who could run for big yards and could really change the dynamic of any particular play, any individual play. Utah did not have an answer for Anthony Richardson. And so this game, we get to learn. We get to see how much Utah has grasped from its Anthony Richardson experience against Dorian Thompson-Robinson. How does Utah's defense handle what DTR brings to the table? That really, to me, is the centerpiece aspect of this game, Utah against UCLA.
I don't want to overplay the psychological portion of this because I try not to get into these the players' heads, but certainly Utah is more battle-tested from not only this season but prior seasons. Used to play, there's a standard there that's been established and met by Kyle Whittingham, and the players have met it. They played in Pac-12 championship games and Rose Bowls, and they've accomplished quite a bit. Where UCLA has met the big stage a few times last season, namely at the Rose Bowl against Oregon. Played a really good game, but couldn't get it done. Blew a game against Fresno State. Just had a very much a season in the shadows last year where nobody was really paying much attention because they lost everybody they were supposed to lose to. They beat 8 patsies en route to an 8-4 season that amounted to really nothing meaningful. So these players are going to be in a game that means something if they really want to have championship aspirations. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond.
Another big tension point and a centerpiece aspect of this game is, can Utah's offensive line mash against UCLA's defensive line? Now, one of the things we saw in UCLA's win over Washington, UCLA's defensive line outplayed Washington's offensive line. I mean, the final score was 40-32, but, this was a 24-point game heading into the fourth quarter. UCLA comprehensively better. Michael Penix was backpedaling for most of the game, throwing off his back foot, throwing, the balls were fluttering through the air. Like UCLA legitimately bullied Washington. And so it throws into question, how good or bad is Washington? Because if you're getting bullied by a Chip Kelly UCLA team, that generally means that you're not very good. But Maybe UCLA under Chip Kelly is turning the corner. Maybe this is a new identity waiting to burst through with a veteran team, a veteran offense. Maybe UCLA is just that good. Utah's the proving ground. And so if you can handle Utah's offensive line, if you can prevent Utah's offensive line from being able to mash, from being able to lean on you for 60 minutes, then we can say that UCLA's defense, for all its flaws, for all its weaknesses, has taken some significant steps forward. So against Washington, it was a good performance, but Washington's not the gold standard. It's Utah. If your defense can hold up physically against Utah's offensive line, knowing what the Utes are capable of in terms of establishing physical superiority, that's when you know that you've arrived. And we'll see if UCLA's defense has truly arrived in this game on Saturday.
LBC Trojans hitting me up on that Game 1 victory at the Rose Bowl by UCLA against LSU last year. Yes, they beat LSU. Of course, LSU went on to lose 7 games. But yeah, a lot of talent on that LSU roster, but still.
Well, and we can all see about Max Johnson's limitations once again. Like this guy is not the answer. He wasn't the answer for LSU. He's not the answer for Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. I don't know what people have seen in him, but he's not it.
Another good sign for UCLA, going along the lines that I opened up the conversation from a psychological standpoint and a readiness for a big game, is that they did get hit in the mouth on the opening drive by Washington. And then they had a nice drive where they blew it inside the 5, went for it on a 4th and goal, didn't get it. So couple gut punches early where they're down 7-0. They've got a scoring opportunity. They blow it. They still come back with a big defensive play for a safety, and then they get it rolling after that.
Absolutely. And, in terms of the big picture with this game, like historically under Chip Kelly, this is a game where UCLA fails. And so, as much as I think the natural inclination is to lean toward Utah in this game, the flip side of this is that if UCLA really does figure this one out, if UCLA really does pass this test, then we have to think about UCLA differently. Maybe not long-term, because you won't have DTR next year. But in terms of this year, if UCLA does pass this test, like UCLA obviously displaces Utah as the number one obstacle for USC on the path to the Pac-12 championship. Now, the Oregon fans will rightly say, hey, wait a minute, we play UCLA the week after the Bruins deal with Utah. That's very true. But, USC does not play Oregon. USC does play UCLA. It's for that reason that I say that UCLA would become USC's main obstacle, because you'd have Oregon, waiting in the Pac-12 championship game, presumably, if the Ducks handle UCLA, on later in October, but UCLA would become the team in USC's path that USC could lose in Salt Lake City. But if UCLA beats Utah, then that game on November 19th in the Rose Bowl, that would be the ultimate game that USC has to win this season.